Hi, friends. Today I'm going to talk about a topic near and dear to my whittle crack heart. Today we're going to talk about the Imperial Stormtroopers. No, not those ones. I mean the hell gun toting, carapace wearing, ultra elites of the Imperial Guard. And yes, that means the Kasrkin are in this very video. Let's go, baby! The magnum opus of this channel is today because I get to talk about my favorite things in all of Warhammer. But we'll get to them later. First, though, what exactly are stormtroopers? Well, in the Astra Militarum, stormtroopers are a general term for the elite shock troopers of the Guard. No, not those ones, even more elite. Stormtroopers are the absolute best of the best for the Guard. They're highly trained, ultra confident, and widely feared. They're the absolute peak of the human physique and are basically like special forces or heavy infantry of the Guard. Think laser blast and Navy SEALs, SAS, or whatever your favorite country spec op guys are called. Now, dudes like the Navy SEALs are already badass in real life, so add a bit of 40k insanity and you're bound to get the Navy SEAL of approval and total badassery. These are just regular humans who get sent on suicidal Space Marine level missions and they get shit done. Most regiments have access to stormtroopers in some capacity, and the regiment specific ones oftentimes have slightly different roles in training. So, today I'll talk about all the notable ones, and before getting into that, let me just describe some of the general traits that all the stormtroopers display more than less. Every type of Militarum Stormtrooper is at peak physical physique, sometimes even sporting some light genetic enhancements and other augments. Despite being mostly unaugmented, these guys are sometimes described as doing actually insane feats. Things like fighting orcs in melee, matching Dark Eldar in speed, dodging bullets, and other things humans really shouldn't be able to do. Along with their physical strength, stormtroopers are also efficient tacticians and have incredible combat instinct. They make split second battlefield decisions and work in near perfect coordination with their squad mates. They literally have the power of friendship on their side. Additionally, stormtroopers are given some of the best equipment of the Militarum. They're issued carapace armor, which, like an ogre, it's got layers, and the armor is essentially an in-between of standard flak armor and power armor. It's very resistant to weapons up to lasguns, which, if you actually know lasgun lore, is actually mighty impressive, but it won't laugh off a plasma shot or anything. Speaking of plasmas or anything, stormtroopers also have access to a host of special weapons like plasmas, meltas, hotshot volleys, or pretty much anything else that the Imperials use. But even their standard weapon is a potent killing machine. Hellguns, or hotshot lasguns if you're a dork, are basically supercharged lasguns that have extreme penetration abilities. This makes it a very formidable weapon. The standard lasgun is already devastating against fleshy bits, but it struggles against armor. By literally bypassing that weakness, the Hellguns are a hyper lethal weapon that can even efficiently kill Marines. But what's a weapon if you can't aim the thing? Stormtroopers are expert marksmen. They target weak spots and shoot with near perfect accuracy. I know tabletop isn't always consistent with the lore, but they have the same accuracy as Space Marines and sometimes even better. Space Marines are mega augmented freaks with literal aim assist, so this says a lot. Essentially, Stormtroopers shoot as good as your friend thinks he does in games. But finally, let's get into the specific type of stormtroopers because, well, I'm tired of saying stormtroopers, and I probably attracted some Star Wars fans. So let's start off with likely the most widespread and most spec op themed dudes, the Tempestus Scions. Primarily specializing in deep strike assaults, recon missions, and infiltrations, Scions are some of the best stormtroopers, if not the best stormtroopers around. Tempestus Scions begin their lives like most people do, as children. From there, they begin their ascent to Sciondom. Often, Scion recruits are orphans of Imperial elites who are raised by the Scala Progenium, which is the same place that commissars, assassins, sisters of battle, and even some inquisitors are taught. Think like 40k versions of those private Catholic schools, except the students and scholars are still somehow less pretentious and insufferable than the average private school kid. At the Scala Progenia, the orphans are put through extremely rigorous training as well as being heavily indoctrinated into the Imperial cult. Part of their training has their memories wiped, and then they get their minds mentally reconstructed into perfectly obedient pawns. Every scion needs to be willing to follow any order without question, no matter how much of a war crime it may or may not be. So they probably just play a COD campaign, and then their final test is braving the dreaded Xbox Live lobby. And to be honest, a lot of the Scion training lore sounds kind of like a middle schooler writing what he thinks to be the most edgy, hardcore, badass stuff he could think of. So I won't touch on every single bit, just fill in the rest with a Mad Lib variation of the above sentence. Kid stepped out of line, so the drill abbot brutally poked their nutsack and then snuggled it in order to set an example to the others. Okay, maybe that one didn't work out super well, but there is some dumb shit like that, like them breaking aspirin's spines and then ripping it out and putting it in a jar, a flipping jar, and then displaying that jar as a warning to others. So just comment down below your version and we'll see who has the chops to be an Imperial drill abbot. Another funny part of their training is that they need to get rid of their names or replace it with the name of an Imperial hero. This is to make trainees disassociate from their personal identities, as well as being a reminder of the heroism they must aspire to. But I find it funny because just like imagine a Navy SEAL team of some dudes named George Washington, MLK, Paul Bunyan, and Neil Armstrong, all led by Sergeant Elvis Presley. But after rigorous training, each and every recruit is reborn as Scion. Equally skilled as they are obedient, as previously mentioned, their main role is often deep striking. They ride Valkyries and Tauroxes into critical locations and use shock tactics to achieve whatever objective they were assigned. Also, Rich Orphan, who went through rigorous training, got high tech gear, and is the peak of humanity. Yeah, put the Scions with Kurz in the Batman like fellows of 40K room. Speaking of drop troopers, this one's a bit on the fence if they're technically a type of stormtrooper, but they have carapace armor, they like special weapons, and they're elite troops, so I'll count it. Plus, much like a storm, these dudes love to be in the skies, so they're actually some of the most stormtroopers to ever storm. I'm talking about the Harakoni Warhawks. Using grav shoots, these guys carry out drop assaults and even work closely with Scions. The Warhawks are some of the best stormtroopers, if not the best stormtroopers around. Not too much is known about these guys, but that might just be because what is already known is just so badass that any more would make people go insane. The Warhawks train on their native world with grav gliders and are some of the most proficient aerial troops, often compared to the Elysians. I personally think that GW really drop troopered the ball by not giving these dudes a little bit more love. Now, the next few Stormtrooper types are a bit less spec ops and more heavy troopers. While they have approximately the same capabilities of all the other Stormtrooper types, they are more integrated with the regular guard regiments and foregoes deep strikes and infiltration for a more direct head-on approach. These dudes are generally dropped off in the most brutal combat zones and are just supposed to wreck as much shit as humanly possible. First up, the Death Korps Grenadiers. As you may have deduced from the name, these are the elites of the Death Korps of Krieg. The Death Korps Grenadiers are some of the best stormtroopers, if not the best stormtroopers around. Unlike the Scions, Grenadiers are mostly made up of hardened veterans rather than brainwashed orphans. I mean, the Krieg are kinda all brainwashed orphans, I think, but these brainwashed orphans get to go to war zones instead of school, so probably the better option. Also, unlike Scions, the Grenadiers are actually fully part of their regiment and aren't a specialized regiment that fights along other guard forces. Even more so than regular Kriegers, the Grenadiers are expected to die, which is saying a lot because the regular Kriegers are literally called the Death Corps. The second word sounding a lot like Corps, as in Corpse, Corps. This means that when appointed a Grenadier, the Guardsman already considers themselves dead and will do anything they are ordered to do with even more fervor, which is pretty metal. It's very similar to the Kriegers. The Armageddon Steel Legion stormtroopers are integrated with the normal regiments and go on the most dangerous spots to, in technical terms, wreck hog. Armageddon Grenadiers are some of the best stormtroopers, if not the best stormtroopers around. I couldn't really find too much information on these guys, but just assume they're yellow version of the Death Corps Grenadiers, just like how the Steel Legion as a whole are yellow versions of the Death Corps of Krieg. Alright, so back to more infiltration-focused stormtroopers. The Catachan Devil are skilled at tracking, scout operations, and they are particularly ferocious in melee combat. Catachan Devils are some of the best stormtroopers, if not the best stormtroopers around. And for this section, I just need to say one thing. The legend Sly Marbo is a Catachan Devil. That's it. That's all I need to say to show how badass these dudes really are. But they are really cool, so I'll say a bit more. One particularly cool thing about these stormtroopers is that their senses are so keen that they can sense enemies even if the enemies have cloaking devices. It smells like bitch in here! Kajin Devil's main battlefield tactic is to stealthily infiltrate deep into enemy lines, and then from there they set traps, subtly influence enemy movements, and occasionally ambush some isolated targets. Then, when the rest of the Kajan regiment arrives, the Devils completely break their cover and then pincer the enemy forces. Okay, finally, it's the moment you and I, but mostly I've been waiting for. I finally get to talk about them. I finally get to talk about the coolest troops in the entire world, the Kasrkin. Woo! Just like the rest of the regiment, the Kasrkin are very versatile and used in a variety of ways. From infiltration missions to shock assaults, the Kasrkin can do it all. The Kasrkin are some of the best stormtroopers, if not the best stormtroopers around. This time for real. Unlike Scions, Kasrkin are mostly made up of hardened veterans who have proved themselves in the battlefield. This means that, in general, Kasrkin are more respected and admired than Scions. Kasrkin are normal dudes who are just so gosh darn good at killing things that they got extra training, bigger guns, and cooler clothes, whereas Scions are brainwashed, personality-less weirdos. So many guardsmen look down on Scions as toy soldier glory boys, which That is ironic considering almost everything in 40k are literally toy soldiers. In addition to veterans, Kasrkin can also be picked from particularly promising white shields. If a recruit shows exceptional skills as a white shield, they can be reassigned for Kasrkin training. Traditionally, Kasrkin were exclusively Cadian, but after the fall of their planet, Kasrkin recruits can come from non-Cadian regiments. These non-Cadian recruits typically have to work hard to prove themselves to the Cadian-born Kasrkin that they are truly deserving of the prestigious role. If accepted as a true equal, the non-Cadian recruits can earn the Kasrkin's signature Caudicade Sea Eagle tattoo. While the tattoo is given to all Cadian Kasrkin, non-Cadian Kasrkin need to show that they're truly the best of the best. They don't call Cadians gatekeepers for nothing. Speaking of the fall of Cadia, although the planet fell, many millions of Kasrkin still kick ass across the galaxy, perhaps with even more fervor than before their planet's destruction. Another interesting product of the planet's fall is how different Kasrkin feel towards the loss of their home. Some Kasrkin were angry at the Cadians who were present at the fall since they had failed their ultimate duty. Those Kasrkin believe that maybe if they were there, perhaps things would have went a little bit better. So they're literally the dude in the "what would you do in this situation? Intervene" tweet. Other Kasrkin are angry at themselves for not being at the planet to fight for their home. Even if it was physically impossible for them to be there, they still resent themselves for not doing anything. Due to their anguish, some Kasrkin have become even more zealous in order to earn forgiveness for their absence. These Kasrkin are the epitome of survivor's guilt, and they probably need some therapy. But no matter how they feel about the fall, the Kasrkin are not discouraged and are just as determined and as deadly as before. To the Kasrkin and the Cadians as a whole, Cadia stands as long as Cadians are still killing shit. I paraphrase that a bit, but that's basically what they feel like. Kasrkin are consistently described as the best of the best, even more so than their contemporaries. Like most stormtroopers, the Kasrkin are often dropped into critical points to disrupt enemy lines, usually via chimera transports or valkyrie airdrops. A few Kasrkin kill teams can completely turn the tide of a losing battle. Kasrkin are so well regarded and respected throughout the galaxy that other regiments, as well as notable Imperial Guard figures, can request a service of them. If approved by Cadian High Command, Kasrkin teams can be sent to serve as bodyguards, elite troopers, or whatever these funky folk might need them for. Now, if this circle jerk of a section hasn't convinced you that the Kasrkin are some of the coolest things in 40k, let me just describe some of their most notable feats. This one gets talked about a lot, but for good reason. It's just absolutely freaking awesome. In the Eisenhorn books, Eisenhorn fights some cultists, and the cultists have a demon host on their side, which is basically just a demon bound to a mortal body. I say just, but being bound to a mortal body actually tends to make demons even more powerful than they are in the Materium. Because you see, demons are beings of the immaterium, so much like an OnlyFans model, they need to spend a great deal of effort to maintain their figure. Demons usually need to spend at least some of their power in order to maintain form in the Materium. Demon hosts, on the other hand, have a convenient body, so they could focus a bit more and go a little bit more nutty. All that was put this next part into perspective. When Eisenhorn encountered the demon host, his Kasrkin guard immediately went to fight the demon host. Their Hellguns didn't work since Eisenhorn was in the way, so they said, "Alright, buddy, no laser, no problem. Get ready to catch these hands." And then these absolute mad lads tackled the demon host, stabbed the crap out of it, ripped his spine out, and momentarily incapacitated it before being slain by the demon. Keep in mind, these are regular, unaugmented humans fighting an ultra mega powered demon in melee. Even though they all perished, 3 regular dudes doing this much damage to a freaking demon host is insane. Another notable feat is how well they fare against Space Marines. GW has always been a bit inconsistent, but Kasrkin can match up to Marines seemingly with a ratio of 5 Kasrkin to 1 Marine on the lower end to about 30 Kasrkin to 1 Marine at the Fall Acadia, which is super impressive. Even if they're being really conservative on the higher end and saying something like 50 Kasrkin to 1 Space Marine, that would still make them insanely efficient considering the difference in production time and the sheer numbers. Theoretically, if the Codex Astartes is assumed to be followed by the majority of chapters, then there should be about a million Loyalist Marines, and there are theoretically even less Chaos Marines. On the other end, Kasrkin numbers are in the high multi-millions. But again, keep in mind that GW numbers are consistently inconsistent, so you could take that with a grain of salt. But still, really good for regular humans. I just love the Guard because they represent the best of humanity, standing up to the myriad horrors of the galaxy. And to me, Kasrkin and Stormtroopers exemplify this the most. Through pure grit, rigorous training, and sometimes a teensy bit of mind-altering chemicals, the indomitable human spirit is embodied in the greatest warriors of the Astra Militarum. So I hope you enjoyed me fangirling about some of the coolest units in all of 40k. I just really love all the Stormtrooper types, from their lore to their whole aesthetic. GW really goes hard on a lot of these guys' designs. Obviously, the Kasrkin design is my favorite. I just love the respirator and the heavy look of the armor, along with their really awesome lore. But the other stormtroopers are super cool as well. The extra armor on the Krieg Grenadiers and their skull mask, that looks freaking awesome. And then the Scions, they also look cool, especially in art when they're like round eyes pierce through the fog or the darkness. And then Scions are cool, but the old designs for the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers, those were absolutely awesome. I love their asymmetrical masks and their general design. I mean, the models, the poses were a bit wonky at times, and I do prefer the cabled Hellgun. But I would have loved to see the signs being a teensy bit closer to these Inquisitorial Stormtrooper designs. And don't think I forgot about the original Stormtroopers. They're a tad bit plain, but the understated look with the berets is actually really cool. Plus, the cables feeding into the grip is a pretty cool design feature as well. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all the patrons that support the channel. You're some of the coolest, if not the coolest people around. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your best of the best elite soldiers. Okay, so I absolutely love the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers designs, but I'm gonna be honest, some of the poses on their models are legit so wonky that it's kind of funny. Like half of them look like they're doing the chicken dance with the way their elbows are popping out, and others have like actual Space Marine parts reused for their weapons. And their faces, they look like the Easter Island heads. But I still love them, and the plasma pistol, bolter, and Auspex guy will always have a place in my heart.